It's great to have you here. Great to see you here.
Always a pleasure.
One thing that I always enjoy about our conversations is the unique perspective and I think actually opportunity that Argentum has brought to the UAE and to Abu Dhabi and ADGM, because you've been in these emerging markets across the globe for so long and been so granular. And in the 15 years I've been here, I haven't seen someone with that kind of expertise come in. So thank you for being a part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, happy to be here. This is our second home. So.
And a little bit about Argentum. I mean, I know that you started at JP Morgan, then you started a fund with Cargill called Black River, and then you launched Argentum, and currently you're in Buenos Aires, New York, London, and now Abu Dhabi, correct?
And Minnesota.
And Minnesota.
Cargill won't let me leave.
Well, you should spend the winters here as opposed to Minnesota.
It's a little different.
So look, let's do what we always do, take a bit of a global tour, and let's start with Latin America. So the big story this year out of Latin America has been Argentina. The new president, his economic reforms, his Make Argentina Great Again sort of theme. Could you tell us your perspective on it? And you've been there a while, what you think the opportunities are, and maybe some situations that you could speak of.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, thanks to ADGM and the leadership for inviting me back. Great event. Happy to have been here all 3 years, so just keeps getting more and more impressive. With respect to Argentina, you have a new president. He is not a politician. He's an economist, and one with very strong views. I think people sort of mischaracterize him and, sort of line him up with Trump. It's not really the case. We've been operating in Argentina for a few decades. Prior to his election, which came as a surprise for a lot of people, it wasn't that surprising for us. We were relatively positive on Argentina, constant volatility, populist governments, but within that context, you're always finding things to do where there's a balance of upside and downside. When Milei won, I think people doubted the willingness of the population to embrace the difficulties that he was about to, put on the populace at large with, pretty serious reforms, very aggressive spending cuts, all with the goal towards free market. And I mean, Argentina's been one of, if not the best performing markets this year in emerging markets. It's been a country where most people have suffered from a returns perspective. We have people on the ground there. We've actually always been profitable in Argentina, which I think is a feat. With his administration, we've adjusted our risk, taken more aggressive risk, and that's paid off very handsomely. But the risk is not gone. It's gone very well, but I mean, you have a massive adjustment happening here. So, but you also have the possibility of, 100-year change is what the president says. So I think, and we're relatively optimistic about that. I think what you'll end up finding is similar to the theme of the prior panel, who I thought that was fantastic. I agree with almost everything they said, especially the comment about special situations is misunderstood in terms of its risk. Spot on. So I think you're going to see opportunities in Argentina that you haven't really, they've been there, but they've been very risky to take. So private credit, long-term growth equity, et cetera. But I would just caution that things can change quickly in Argentina. As quickly as this positive wave has come, it can reverse. So it's probably a little early to take that step today, but definitely a very big opportunity if this continues.
And I guess vis-a-vis Latin America, I mean, you can't really paint Latin America with one broad brush that, it's a homogeneous market. So do you see some of the other countries moving in the same direction, or is it just idiosyncratic?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting as Argentina has moved away from populist governments, many of the other countries have gone the other way. You see that in Brazil, you see that, in Mexico with the re-election, or not the re-election, but the election of the same party, the Morena party. So I think there's tough times ahead for a country like Mexico, especially with the, new administration in the States. The free trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico is up for renewal in 2026. You're already hearing the saber rattling, so I think that's a major factor in what lies ahead for Mexico, and I think it's really tough to predict. And those kinds of opportunities, for us generally, when there's lack of visibility, volatility, a big but fast shift in policy usually represents good opportunity for special sits. So we don't have much exposure there today. In fact, we have none. But looking closely, Brazil is a land of always opportunity. It's one of the more unique, probably the most unique market in Latin America, but it's also, I would say, the market where the local institutions are as competitive as anywhere else in the world. So it has its own unique challenges.
So let's take a quick pivot over to Asia. And you've been in China for a long time.
Yep.
A lot of people are sort of on the fence about China right now. You have the new Trump administration coming in. What do you see happening in China over the next couple of years? And also, is that an opportunity or?
Definitely an opportunity. It's been a bit of a wasteland for a lot of fixed income investors, primarily because of property. But we similar to Argentina, we've actually had a very good run in China. People say you can't do restructurings, the law doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Our experience has been very different. But I think you need to be on the right side of government policy. One thing about the Chinese government, when they tell you, don't do this, or we're going to do that, pay attention. And I think the sectors that have suffered have been, fairly well telegraphed. So we've done well by being very mindful of that, trying to be aligned and be involved in win-win situations where, the outcome is good for both sides. And, it takes a network, takes long-term presence. I mean, similar to what the folks were saying about doing business in the Middle East. I mean, these are very similar characteristics. It's very different, but the sort of the overall thesis is.
And I've also seen you build relationship with these families.
Yep.
So you may have solved a problem, and then on top of a problem comes an opportunity as well to diversify your exposure there.
Yep.
What about the rest of Asia? Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia. Are you looking at those markets? Are you doing anything there?
Yeah, we've been more active. I mean, historically, we've been in China and Indonesia primarily. But we've expanded that. We've done some business in the Philippines, very excited about that. Started to do some venture lending. So our core business is a special situation, sort of stressed and distressed, with some verticals that are adjacent to that and complementary. So venture lending, private credit, and with the size of populations in places like Philippines, it's growing, underbanked, very interesting. We just got our license here, so we're very happy about that. But being here has given us a vantage point of looking at places in the or adjacent to the region, so Africa, Turkey, and I think the key for us, our long-term success, I think, has been built on emerging markets is a very, very large space, and you have so many countries with unique cultures, bankruptcy systems, et cetera, that you need to try and embed yourself locally, however you manage to do that, whether it's on the ground or through your networks, and be focused on the areas where you see special opportunities. Don't try and be everywhere at the same time.
So you mentioned Turkey, and we talked about Asia a little bit. Now that you're here, it also seems you're starting to make some investments in the broader region.
Yep. Turkey,
Egypt. I know that you were listening very intently to what was being discussed previously.
Yeah, and I think they're spot on. It was a great panel.
What about what you've done in Turkey and Egypt? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so while we're not sector specialists, we do have our preferences, and we're increasingly finding what we like to do syncs with, the goals of the UAE. The recent thing we did in Turkey was in energy transition materials. Love copper, but not just. We invested in a copper and gold mining company, using that as an acquisition vehicle for other acquisitions around the region. Synced with one of the important local families, which we thought was very, very important. That can be a double-edged sword, of course, so you really have to choose, your partners carefully. But very excited about that, and being here really, really helps. That a lot.
I've seen that you're in these markets, but you're also getting close to commodities and natural resources that are important to Abu Dhabi's growth plans and maybe energy transition plans as well.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, that really makes you unique here. Well, congratulations on getting the license. I know it's been 2 years to get to this point. What do you see for the future for Argentum here from Abu Dhabi now?
Well, I'm looking forward to a Bills Super Bowl. I don't know if we're going to renew our bet this year, but very excited about having our license. And we've been investing here 2 years, and in people and in networks and so forth. And I think now we'll be able to have that, really be able to accelerate that growth. I think the opportunities that were mentioned previously, right up our alley. We're very excited about Africa. Turkey's been a great start. So this is our growth as a firm is going to be in Abu Dhabi for sure.
That's great. So you mentioned the Bills. I don't know if anybody knows, but we support rival football teams. This is going to take 10 seconds. What is your team's record this year? 10-3?
Yeah, 10-3. Unfortunately, we lost.
My team is 3-10. Dan gave me a Bills hat last year, which I've been wearing somewhat, that's part of the bet. I'm not giving you a Jets hat. I'm giving you a capital of capital hat.
All right.
So there you go.
That I will wear proudly.
And that's a photo op for anybody.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you, everybody.